So we talked a lot in class last time about slope, and we looked at this formula right here, y equals mx plus b. And I said, if you leave algebra not knowing anything, at least know this, because this whole unit is linear equations, and this is where we started, and we said it's going to form a line, 1, and it's an equation because it has that equal in it, right? So we already know that m, my story took place on a mountain, so m is the slope. B, to me, it seems should be the beginning point. So I always say B is the beginning point, but what it actually is, it is the y-intercept. And we're going to talk, we know the x-intercept is here. Remember when we solved equations last year and we said when we solved it, it's where the graph intercepts the x-axis when we solve for zeros. But here, it's the y-intercept. If you have a line, the y-intercept is where it crosses your y-axis. So that's the beginning point there, that y-intercept. So here's the deal. For us to be able to graph something, we want it in this form. It's ugly. It's going to have fractions. It's not going to be whole numbers. We got x on one side, y on the other side. But when it is in this form, it is super easy to graph. And that's what we're after, super easy to graph. So on this one, if I give you a slope of 2 and I give you a y-intercept of -1, how would I write this equation? Well, we evaluate just like we've been doing. We say y equals, my slope is 2x minus 1. So let's talk about this. Remember when we introduced this, I said y and x never ever change. You always need a y and you always need an x, because that's going to be your table of values. You're going to have millions and millions of tables of values. So x and y are always going to be changing. The only thing so x and y is going to remain the same here. The only thing that changes to make this line is a slope and a y-intercept. So my slope is positive, my y-intercept is negative. So now I have y equals 2x minus 1. So on number 2, I would say y equals -3/5 x plus 4. My slope is -3/5. My beginning point, my y-intercept is 4. Okay? So I'm just plugging in things. Y equals, my slope is -3. X stays the same. My y-intercept is 2. So you'll notice here that my slope is always the coefficient of my x value. My coefficient of my x value is -3/5. That's my slope. My coefficient of my x value is -3. So my slope is always the coefficient of my x value. So here it's y equals, I can say -1x plus 7. I can do that. But the simplest version would be me saying y equals -x plus 7. Notice it's the same thing. My coefficient is -1. It's -1 here. It means the same thing. But this is simplified. So over here, when you have a slope y equals 1/4 x, my y-intercept is plus 0, but that's not simplified. The simplified version would be y equals 1/4 x. Because it's understood when there's nothing there that my y-intercept is 0. And this last one is going to be y equals -5/2 x minus 3. So really we're just plugging in for my slope, plugging in for my y. So if I give you a slope and I give you a y-intercept, you should be able to put it into y equals mx plus b form. All right, let's go up a little bit more. I know my board's not working completely. All right. So now, if I give you a graph, can we still write it in y equals mx plus b form? Can we put it in there? Well, yeah. We already know how to find the slope. Remember, that's what we did that last lesson when we had a line and we figured out the slope. And then we can identify my y-intercept. So here's my slope. I know my skier's going uphill, so my slope is positive. Remember, I start with my leftmost point. And I go rise over run. So I go up 3 over 1. So my slope is 3 over 1, or just 3. Up 3 over 1. And my beginning point is, look, here's my y-intercept, my y-axis, and my y-intercept is right there at -4. So now that I have my slope and now that I have my y-intercept, I can say y equals 3x minus 4. All right, let's look at number 8. I know my slope is negative, so if my turtle starts at the leftmost point, he's going to have to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's going down 6, and he's running positive 4. So negative 6 over 4, remember slope is always reduced fraction, so m equals negative 3 over 2. And where does this line intersect the y-axis? Right here. And at what point is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So my beginning point 7. So when I plug it into y equals mx plus b form, I get y equals negative 3 halves x plus 7. Always remembering that slope is the coefficient of x. Coefficient of x. All right, let's do a couple more together. Okay. Let's do, all right. My slope, so I identify my 2 points. This is positive 2 up 2 over 2, 4, 5. So my slope is 2/5. That's the first step. My second step is to identify my y-intercept. If this is my origin, my y-intercept is negative 3. So here I had to write it. I had to say, okay, my slope is 2/5. My beginning point's negative 3. Now that that's identified, I can say y equals 2/5 x minus 3. All right? So identify slope, identify beginning point. So my slope here is 1, 2, 3, 4, up 5. And then I go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But slope is always reduced, so its slope equals 1. And my beginning point, if this is my origin, my beginning point is negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6. So now that I have my slope, now that I have my beginning point, I have y equals 1x minus 6. But I want it simplified, so y equals x minus 6. That's the form I want. All right, number 11. I know my slope is negative, so it's going to go down 2 and over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Negative 2/8, but I always reduce slope, so it's negative 1/4. My slope is negative 1/4. My beginning point is right here, and it's located at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So y equals negative 1/4 x plus 5. All right, number 12. My slope is positive, and it goes up 4 over 3. So slope is 4/3, and my beginning point is right at the origin, which is 0. So I'm going to write it as y equals 4/3 x. I am not going to put plus 0. That's not simplified. This is the simplified way to write it. Okay? All right. So hopefully looking at it in slope-intercept form is easy. If you have questions, come and see me.